I do want to ask you, and this is a pretty open-ended question, if you could speak to any of the early experiences in your life that you believe kind of shaped you into who you are today.
I was kind of a wandering soul. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And so in these various jobs, I learned some very important lessons that later became part of the 48 Laws, which is basically you think that your talent, your goodness, your kindness, your hard work is enough in this world, but it isn't, right? Because naive people, I count myself among them, don't understand the power game, don't understand how they might be inadvertently making people feel insecure, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you're not adept at the social aspect of the work world, it's like you're putting yourself behind the eight ball. You're kind of giving yourself a continual handicap. And I had many experiences like that, you know? I think of one experience where somebody, I was a journalist living in New York back in the early 80s because I'm a relatively old guy. And I had done an article on Italy. It was like a travel article. The editor of the article took me to lunch one day, and he was drinking rather heavily at lunch. And then at one point he said, "Robert, you're never going to be a writer. You don't have the talent. You're not disciplined enough. You're all over the place. You don't know how to communicate. I would suggest that you go to law school or business school, but this isn't for you, okay?" It was kind of a turning point for me because it made me realize, A, I don't like working for other people because they, pull that kind of crap on you. But B, I was in the wrong field. I was doing something I was writing for money in a profession that I didn't really respect. It wasn't a good fit. And so it kind of set me on this course where I was trying all sorts of different things, writing novels, working in Hollywood. Somebody calling me out like that was actually a blessing in disguise. It's kind of similar to Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way. So looking at criticism, and I've gotten criticism before, particularly before I wrote my books, is actually a positive experience. You need these kind of moments where you're either failing or your feet are on the fire and people are telling you negative things. You need those moments to grow. And I had plenty of those moments until I wrote my book.
And to what you were just saying, I mean, how do you know when you're receiving criticism, whether that criticism is valid or perhaps that it's not? Because, clearly your career as a writer turned out quite well. But I guess, how do you discern between, the two types of feedback?
Well, it's hard because initially when you get something like that, your emotions, your ego is all involved, right? But I like to look at it when people criticize you, there's always a germ of truth to it. Yes, there are people who feel envy, and there might be a political purpose behind kind of making you feel bad, right? They envy you, or et cetera, et cetera. But generally, what this person was saying was actually true and right. I wasn't a good fit in journalism. And the thing is, initially I was very upset and it bothered me, but then slowly it dawned on me that he was right. If you look at it that way, you can learn from each of these kinds of incidents because he was onto something. He understood. Now, of course, there are times where people are just trying to make you feel bad, and you have to be able to distinguish that. But even when that happens, it's a lesson for you because it means you're able to distinguish people's true criticism. And you know when people are just being political and mean-spirited, right? Because the criticism doesn't hit at all. It has nothing to do with you. There's nothing in it that you can learn from. In this particular case, there was something I could learn from, that I was not a good fit for me. But in any kind of situation like that, you have to learn to kind of drop your ego and listen and see if there might be some truth to what people are saying.
And if we fast forward a bit, and this is to 98 when the 48 Laws of Power came out. And I'm just curious, if when that book was about to come out, did you know, were you looking at it and saying, hey, this is a pretty good book. I think this is going to be a hit? Because obviously now it's exploded. It's been over 2 decades. Everybody from prison inmates to movie stars, rappers, nonfiction authors. I mean, I think I saw even recently it's still in the top 10 best-selling books on Amazon overall. But How did you feel about it before the book came out?
Well, to be honest with you, I had success late in life. So when that book came out, I was 39 years old, which is I'm a late bloomer if you want to be honest about it. So I had so many setbacks, so many failures, so many disappointments that I was quite realistic. And so I understood that this book would either be successful or would be an abysmal failure. And the reason I thought that, and I would kind of bounce back between the two. When I thought it'd be a great success, I imagined myself on all these talk shows and on the cover of magazines. The other side was this copy will bomb, it'll be a disaster. And the reason I thought that is it's a very strange book. I mean, I think you'll have to agree. You've never physically seen a book that looks like it on the inside. The way it's structured, the different colors, the things on the margins, the stories that are being told. It was an incredible risk that I took in writing in that kind of particular format, which didn't really exist. There's really not a book that looks like that. In the back of my mind, the strangeness of the book was either going to make it incredibly successful or an incredible failure. And I tell people that it's better to fail being yourself and being bold and trying to chart new ground than kind of following what other people do and maybe having kind of mediocre success. Because I think the strangeness and weirdness of the book is contributed to it becoming a kind of a cult classic.
What do you believe it was really kind of the allure of it? Just to see so many different, like just such a spectrum of readers, just across really all aspects of society. Like, what do you think was the allure of the book?
It's kind of feeding a little bit into the dark side of human nature, which is quite repressed in our culture. When it comes to a subject like power or the work world or offices or being a lawyer or whatever, we don't like to really talk about the truth. And when you see like a lot of self-help books out there, they all try to emphasize the goodness of human nature, how people are basically cooperative. You don't want to be manipulative. You don't want people to see you in this light, et cetera, et cetera. And it wasn't my experience in the work world. And I've had many, many different jobs. There are a lot of great people. I had great bosses, but 5, 10% of them were grand manipulators, and they made me suffer, and I saw them punish a lot of other people. The lack of honesty in our culture was this book here was like a big splash of some really cold water in your face, right? It's like, this is reality. This is what people are like. They manipulate, they conceal their intentions, they get other people to do the work, and they take the credit. Nobody talks about that. It was like a dirty little secret. People talk about all of the ins and outs of their sex lives, about money. But when it comes to that side of human nature, oh no, we don't want to talk about it. We're so embarrassed. And so the fact that I was so brutally upfront about this is how power operates in the world, I think is what made people kind of be attracted to it in a very powerful way. And so I think that's part of the allure.
And I'm curious to just going from a book like that becomes a cult classic, and then obviously you're continuing to write other books, right? Whether it's The Art of Seduction or even years later, The Laws of Human Nature. Just as a writer, does that carry a heavier weight on your shoulders now, having had such a hit? Just to say, okay, I'm gonna have a follow up and a second and a third and a fourth, and continue to do this. What's that like from a writing standpoint?
Yeah, it adds pressure, but look at the t-shirt that you're wearing. Pressure is a good thing. When I came to my second book, I was very nervous because this first book was very successful. And the risk is the second book is a bomb. A lot of people have good first books and the second books don't really connect. It's a very common phenomenon. We see that in music with people who are one-hit wonders, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was a good thing because basically it set up a pressure for me. Like, here's a level that I have to continually reach. I can't let go. I can't relax. I can't rest on my laurels, on the good reviews, on the book sales. I have to reach and even make a better book the next time. So I'm someone who kind of feeds off, which is why I'm attracted to your t-shirt. I'm someone who kind of feeds off the pressure. It gives me energy. It makes me excited. And each time I write a book, I have the idea that I wanted this one to be the biggest seller of them all. And so it makes me work extra hard. It makes me extra diligent and persistent. But I welcome that kind of privilege. I'm an extremely lucky man that I've had this sort of success. So I can't really complain about anything about it.